Hi, I'm Brad Corrion, CTO of IOTech, and happy to be here with you, Johan.
Thank you much. And I'm Johan Krebbers. I'm the CTO for Acuvate. So today we're going to talk about the focus will be on the edge solutions and why edge solutions are important and where you would deploy these edge solutions, but also looking at the end-to-end story, because edge is not an isolated thing. It's part of an end-to-end story of how to collect data, how to manipulate data, and how to get value out of the data. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's first talk about Acuvate. Acuvate is a system integrated with our own IP. So we are 500 people company. We've been in the industry for 18 years. We have a large data and AI practice. And what we're doing over here is really part of our data and AI practice with extensive skills in that space. We also have an AI and automation practice where we really work on Gen AI developments and really make several applications operational based on Gen AI. And we have a workplace modernization practice as well. In all these cases, you see, we work with several partners, and IOTech is one of our partners. And of course, you see at the bottom our accelerators. Our accelerators, our IP, it's really what the developments we make in-house, and we're using to speed up our activities. The latest accelerator, for instance, Acuvate, you see it all on the right, is to help you fast migrating data from SQL Server, from Oracle, from Synapse to a Microsoft Fabric environment. Just one example of an accelerator. So as I mentioned, we have customers in Europe, US, Middle East, and Asia. We have people around the world based in US, in Europe, in the UK, and also in the Middle East, and of course in Asia. And our technology center is based in Hyderabad in India. Our customer base is in many different areas. Our focus areas are where we do our own development for very much oil and gas energy and manufacturing, and also retail and supply chain. We also are active in other verticals, but we don't have our own development so much over there. We do have IP for those areas. We have really developed our own applications, our business solutions for manufacturing, energy, and supply and retail and supply chain. And you see that we have customer base around the world, as I just mentioned. So let me hand over now to before I hand over to Brad is we are going to have some if you have questions, then please use your Q&A button at the top and then ask the question. Yeah, most likely you're familiar with that. We also have some pop-up questions for you to vote upon. Again, the question will pop up. You just select 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then confirm your selection. It's very, very straightforward. You can't miss it. So let me hand over to the first poll. So the first poll you see over here. Have you already implemented edge computing solutions in your organization? So that question with your poll, with potential answers, is coming up. Sorry. Okay, let's move forward and let's do the introduction by Brad of IOTech. Brad, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so IOTech, we are focused on open edge platforms. Kind of like Johan was talking about the focus in industrial. Our founding was focused on bringing our middleware DNA into industrial connectivity solutions, but with a twist that we're basing this on open source projects. And thus creating an edge computing platform that's based on open source principles. So we're proud of the role that we get to play in the community, bringing others together, but also the kinds of customers that we've been able to build to so far. And we look forward to hearing about more opportunities and more challenges that we can address with our capabilities.
Okay, let's talk about some of the IP developed by Acuvate to really help the speed deployment of digital solutions. The first one we're going to talk about is this 7-step approach, we call it. How does it work? You define your business problem, like you want to increase your production, or your production has issue problems. Then how do you, in terms of digital, you solve these problems first by collecting the data source on the left, number 1 on the left. you first define the data source you need to solve that business problem. That might be time series data, that might be camera images, that might be SAP data, that might be data from any other application, any other sensor you might have for collecting the data. So you collect the data you need to solve that business problem you're talking about. If that business problem is very time critical, you have to make a decision on the spot at the same time you collect the data, then you bring it to Edge, and that's where IOTech is going to play the major role, because really we bring it to an IOTech environment, and IOTech is going to play in a moment, Brad will explain in a moment all the ins and outs of IOTech Edge Central. But really we bring that to, so you see the integrate in our end-to-end solution. And there we would run then our analytics, and there we would give maybe a set point back to number one to make a change in the setup. If it's not time critical, we bring the data number 4, and that's our Acuvate Enterprise Data Platform. It's called AcuPrism, where we bring all data together, and then we apply in number 5 analytics to the data in 4. It can be very simple analytics like Power BI, Microsoft Power BI. It can be more complex analytics like machine learning, machine vision, or predictive maintenance, or whatever problem you want to solve with analytics. And then the results of the analytics in 5, you integrate in your business process in 6. That could be into a digital twin from Kongsberg. That could be into, as I mentioned, advisory set point. That could be in another, it could be just an email, could be something, how you integrate the results into your business process. And of course, 7, where you have the final decision maker. Before these steps, of course, the first part is really about data, but if you just collect data and you have no analytics, of course, that adds no value. Then it's only costing you money. We do this with partners, and you see IOTech is a very important part. So we have integrated IOTech into our end-to-end story, because we as system integrator can implement at your place this end-to-end story from 1 to 7. And you see some of the partners over there. IOTech will be explained to you in a moment by Brad. You see Anybotics on the left. It's a Swiss company with very nice, sophisticated robotics for the various industries. Walking robots can go upstairs, can go downstairs. You see Kongsberg on the right. That's our partner for our digital twin solution. So if you want to see your results in the digital twin environment, then we fully integrate with Kongsberg, bring all the data into Kongsberg digital twin. And of course, you see other partners over here. I won't go them all, but these are partners we work with into having a rich end-to-end story to really come from data collection, data storage, data manipulation, analytics to visualization. Go ahead, Brad.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so for the next part, we'll walk through some of our products in particular. If we want to move forward, we can look at Edge Central. Edge Central is the heart of the IOTech product roadmap. It brings together all of our capabilities, and it's the definition of our open edge data platform. So we base it off of the EdgeX Foundry, which we'll get to in just a second. But what it does is it allows us to connect up all the various data sources in your organization at the site, and then easily stitch that together into edge compute capabilities, whether you're doing AI, whether you're working with just moving the data, curating the data, transforming the data, or doing advanced capabilities with the data. We're able to orchestrate that all, stitch that all together into the edge compute requirements for your situation. So let's click forward. I mentioned EdgeX Foundry. The EdgeX Foundry is the open source heart of Edge Central. It's been in existence now, probably going on 7 or 8 years. Kind of COVID messes up your sense of time, but it's been founded by a number of big players, and then over the years we've had folks contribute as the product has matured. And I think we're at a point now where we've moved past maturing and we're in deployments. So the kinds of investments going into EdgeX are focused on deployments and usability improvements as multinational corporations now are adopting and moving forward. So we'll repeat some of these points in the next slide. So let's move forward. So the point of EdgeX Foundry is that it's a standards-based, I should say the APIs become the standards of the platform. So this box roughly represents the choices you have, the options you have when you deploy an EdgeX installation. The dark blue in the middle are considered the core services. These are what provide the basis of the architecture, your data, your commanding of devices, metadata describing your devices, and registering configuration. You really need those pieces as the center of any deployment. Everything else in gray is considered optional. And because it's optional, that's where a stakeholder like IOTech comes in, because we'll bring our experience from the market and understanding of the problem at hand to figure out what optional pieces are required to finish an implementation of EdgeX. So from the bottom, you have device services, that's your connectivity pieces. And then moving to the top, the northbound, this is where we have our application services and the additional types of compute required to move data northward. And on the sides, we have security services and the pieces that pull this together from a management point of view. But what this means, that blue layer in the middle, we're going to funnel all data through a consistent set of APIs. So regardless if it came from a camera, if it came from a Modbus device, or if it came from a BACnet sensor in a building, all of that data will come through that blue layer in the same format, so that it's easily digestible by other applications. And as well, you can command devices with that same format, same command APIs, so that you provide a normalization for both the data and the command and control of those devices. For an innovation team, that's a wonderful thing, because you get to point at one platform to say, here's how we're going to bring together all of our capabilities for our organization. And I think some of the important parts is that as we move into deployments, we now have a long-term support capability from an open source perspective. So we have 2-year windows with our LTS releases. And if we click forward one more, we just had our summer elections for the technical steering committee. And it was a notable achievement, because we went from some of the founding members who were building out the basic technology, and we now have adopters. Right, so you have Intel and IOTech on the board, coming from our historical roots, and now we have Eaton, Danfoss, Schneider, and Nikisoft, our adopters of EdgeX, who are now part of the steering committee and helping chart the direction forward with the organization. So for us, it's actually a big deal, because we're now represented by the people who are adopting and using our software and giving us the legs to go for the next generation. So let's go forward. So we kind of showed that blue-gray diagram of EdgeX Foundry. Well, Edge Central is the branded solution from IOTech. So we have EdgeX Foundry in the middle, and then we have our 3 pieces that we like to describe our capabilities: fuse and use, acquire and control, manage and monitor. But ultimately what this does together is allows us to connect any IoT device or sensor to any cloud or IT system that you need to connect, and do all sorts of fun things in between that connection. So let's move forward, because we're going to go into some of these in more detail here. So fuse and use, this part on top, this is recognizing that data fusion, we're pulling together device data from multiple domains into a single normalized format. This allows us to start creating AI that you might not have been able to do before. Some of our use cases will touch on that. So we get to cross data from building automation standards, from IoT sensor standards, and we get to pull that into a unified set of capabilities. And then we can also use namespaces and tagging, so that we can hit things like haystacks on spec and use OPCUA to normalize how we represent data models going northbound. We tend to support pretty much any hardware you can deploy on, demonstrated mostly by your need. If you're low end or high end, we can go all the way up to a Xeon server and all the way down to an ARM MCU when required. So let's move forward. So examples of what you can do in that northbound layer. So of course we can just move data up to the cloud, but we also support easy ingestion into various time series databases, easy integration with Node-RED, easy integration with Grafana for dashboarding. Makes it quite quick from a configuration point of view. You can drop in an instance of Edge Central, and without having to write code, typically get a basic dashboarding application running based on influx and connectivity to your sensors. So from that, you can then start to build out your organization's capabilities, start collecting the data you need to train models, and consider how you move into more advanced analytics from that point forward. Let's move forward. So similar here, it's interesting, a capability that people don't necessarily recognize, that once you have dozens of cameras deployed in your environment, those cameras are now IoT devices. So they need to be managed. So they need to be, typically should be managed in a central point of view. But now you can also integrate their streaming data into local AI models running at the edge, which now generate time series data from the inferences of those models that we can now fuse into other analytics capabilities of your store. So if you have RFID readers, if you have barcode scanners, if you have these cameras, all of that data can now be fused into one set of analytics to solve a use case. So let's move forward. We provide an easy to use GUI. So it's the kind of thing that you can log into and in a normal configuration, just start viewing the devices that you've onboarded. Look at general health. You can go look at cache data that we've been collecting from the devices. You can start and stop managed services, typical user interface, but it's also available via API and CLI as well. So it's the trifecta of user interfaces, but it does make it easy for just starting to provision your system and to do some debug when things start to go south. Let's move on. So acquire and control. Most of our conversations start here. I've got these devices. How do I talk to them? Typically, we've got the protocols already inside of Edge Central. When we get to the next slide, we'll see what those protocols are. But the biggest OEMs are covered by what we do today, and the generic protocols we support allow us to pull in nearly everything else. So whether it's REST, MQTT, OPC UA, moving on, we have quite a few to choose from. So let's go ahead and look at the list. The point is that one of the challenges of our space is that we have all of these protocols. IOTech prides itself on the quality of the connectors that we have that come with Edge Central and the performance, recognizing that sometimes the open source offerings are fine for a proof of concept, but when you're moving into mission critical systems, you need something that you can fall back on an organization to support and know it's going to hit the performance requirements you have. And so again, coming back to that model, all of these will get normalized into a single command and control layer and data normalization layer for easy integration by your other applications. So let's move forward. We also offer out-of-the-box integrations with various cloud and northbound endpoints. So in most cases, it's just a configuration to decide where your data is moving to. And if you need to do more, there's SDKs you can utilize to build applications to transform the data, filter the data, curate the data, or do tag-based actions before moving that data up to its final destination. So let's move on. Thank you. And then lastly, it's easy to forget about managing and monitoring, right? And especially in larger organizations where we have a team that's focused on solving a particular problem, who doesn't necessarily empathize with the problem of deploying to 1,000 locations or 1,000 remote locations. And so as part of our software suite, we have the ability to help you deploy these kinds of software applications across remote environments, recognizing that IoT and edge computing is typically the opposite of cloud computing. It's geographically distributed. It may use some of the same technologies. We may use some of the same tools, but rather than have thousands of identical VMs, we probably have thousands of individually provisioned edge systems. And so we've built tooling to help balance those conflicting requirements and to make it easy to deploy Edge Central at scale. So let's move forward. And I think this is the final slide of the kind of product overview section. But this represents the three things that you would find when you look at our website. Edge Connect from the bottom is the deep connectivity. If you just need commercial connectors to talk to specific protocol devices, or you need a Spark B native integration, we can start our conversation with Edge Connect. We actually embed Edge Connect inside of our Edge Central, which is where we spent the last 5 minutes discussing. That's where we merge EdgeX Boundary with our industrial connectors from Edge Connect. And then we add on things like our GUI, our security capabilities, and our support offerings to give you Edge Central. So both of those can deploy into scale, and both of those require our Edge Manager. Don't require, we highly suggest that you use a product like our Edge Manager to manage the deployment across your fleet. And this, again, gives you another set of GUIs, CLIs, and APIs for managing that fleet at scale. It's multi-tenant, so you can separate your project deployments either by customer, by department, by organization. And this is a piece of software that you can choose where to deploy it. If you want to deploy it in your cloud, in a VM, or on a server behind your security perimeter, these are all options. So it's a self-hosted capability. All three of these together represent IOTech's offerings and allow us to respond to nearly any challenge you can throw our way. And I think that's the last slide, Johan, for this section.
Yeah, thank you much. Well done, Brad. So maybe poll 2, how would you rate your data readiness to adopt edge computing? So the poll will come up, and please make your choice and submit, and we can move on. Okay, now we're going to talk about our industrial platform. And this is really an ended story again. On the left, the dark blue, you see the various data sources. The brown part is really the edge solution. You just being explained by Brad is really IOTech, and it shows you how IOTech fits in the overall story. And the bluish part after is our AccuPrism, is our industrial intelligent data platform for an enterprise. It's based on Databricks undercover, but we've made extensions to it. We've licensed software from Shell, where we give excellent support for high-speed time series data coming in for many sources into the blue part. We can then clean the data, we can curate the data, we can contextualize the data. And so that's the bluish part in the middle, called AccuPrism. And then the purple part is really our also Databricks-based analytics platform. And you see various options over here. Again, can be very simple, just Microsoft Power BI. But of course, it can be more sophisticated, using machine vision. If you have lots of camera images, machine learning, if you have lots of time series data for predictive maintenance or for other jobs. And of course, also GenAI plays an important role here. And then in the green part, you make everything visible again into the business process. So AccuPrism is something we install in your environment. It can be installed in your Azure cloud environment, your Amazon cloud environment, or your Google cloud environment. So it's been pre-configured, and we can quickly install that and configure that your environment. So in your subscription, that means that the data at all times stays under your own control. We've added Kafka for high speed, and we have added, as I mentioned, other software to really be able to handle billions and billions of real-time records in this data platform. But it integrates again with the store from Brad a moment ago. If it's time critical, you need somebody to add, then of course we use AccuNow or IOTech for that. And here you see we also are developing a version of AccuPrism based on Microsoft Fabric that will come to the market later this year, early next year. Let's talk about the S space, OT and IT. I mean, OT is in the energy market and manufacturing space very important. You heard from Brad the number of the protocols being used over there, still highly proprietary, driven by Yokogawa, by Siemens, by Honeywell. So it's not yet standard based. It is moving that way, but it will take time. One of the main developments over there is the OPAS of the Open Group, which is being tested now by a number of large enterprises like Shell and Exxon in their energy space, because it's important that also the OT space is moving to a standard-based platform, because you got more choice, more flexibility, lower costing, and you're not limited to just work with a single vendor. You heard it from Brad, of course, support for many different sensors out there. You all see the 5G cameras. Brad was talking about cameras. We really focus at 5G cameras because it means you can use the 5G protocol, which is low latency, high throughput, and you can stream real-time the data to your IOTech environment and have the machine vision in your AccuNow IOTech environment to analyze the data. I mean, that's 5G over 4G. With 5G, I can stream real-time data using my 5G network, either your public network or your private network, to an edge environment, look at the machine vision data, and make decisions and send it back to, as an advisor set point, back to your OT space. I'm going to skip this, what you heard about it, but really IOTech is really our edge solution. And here you see two examples of 5G deployments. At the top is a drone with a 5G camera. And it means that you bring it again to an edge environment. So you bring it to an IOTech edge environment. There, the data being analyzed, the images are being analyzed immediately as we speak. And you can see immediately set points back to the drone to tell them to go back to a certain space or do other things. And the same example to where we're deploying here antibiotics. As I mentioned before, we're partnering closely with antibiotics, which is a walking robot suitable for energy, suitable for also the OT space, so intrinsic safe device in any environment. Of course, there are well-known pain points in the energy space. You see them over here on the left. Unplanned downtime impacting production, number one. But these are all pain points, and we have developed solutions, business solutions to address these pain points. Here, see some more pain points in the energy space. And of course, you all see these pain points in the manufacturing space. Some are exactly the same, like unplanned downtime is an issue both in energy and in manufacturing. So we develop business solutions to address these pain points. You see them over here. At the bottom, the green part is really our platform. You see our Acuvate Enterprise Data Platform. You see our Acuvate Edge Platform, which is IOTech. You see the 7-step framework we spoke about. You see the governance, and we supporting Microsoft Purview, and we have our own method to really get a good governance in place for your data. And on top of that, you see the light green, the gray, the bluish part. You see the various solutions, business solutions. You all have an AI component. It could be AI machine vision, if it's camera images, machine learning, if it's normal time series data. It could also be Gen AI in combination with other things. So these are business solutions focused in the energy manufacturing space, which we can implement and run on top of our data platform. If already you have a data platform yourself, so you already have an enterprise data platform, of course, we're not going to replace it. We would then integrate our AI solutions with that platform. And here you see the same material, but not purely the business solutions. And you see also which one are Gen AI enabled or Gen AI enriched. Gen AI enabled means they are native Gen AI applications. Gen AI enriched means it could be a machine learning, machine vision application. And on top of that, we're using Gen AI to enrich the user experience. So these are examples of business solutions. You see HSE, you see predictive maintenance, you see OE applications for the manufacturing space, and they all have a role to play. Over to you, Brad.
All right, so we're going to walk through two use cases, and we're going to describe how some of our customers are utilizing the technology to solve them. So let's move forward. So this first one, I wasn't quite sure how to coin it. But the title does describe it. We're using artificial intelligence. We're using artificial intelligence to harvest energy and meet conservation goals, CO2 reduction goals. So in this case, the basic example is either steam production or chilled water production for buildings and factories. And so historically, these were very simple control loops, typically a set point on a thermostat or on a temperature sensor, and off you go. But what's happened is, as we get aggressive about, how we're trying to tackle carbon conservation objectives, as well as recognize efficiencies and cost structures and operations, we can do more than just set a temperature on a boiler, set a temperature on a chilled water tower, and go forward. So what we do is we collect as much data as we can. We collect data from our building automation systems. We try to figure out occupancy of buildings. We try to forecast demand. We try to do everything we can through data collection to build models of what future demand will look like, and then adjust our boilers and adjust our chilled water solutions in order to produce what's required, but nothing more. And so the reason IOTech gets excited about this is because the amount of data required and the number of sources of data in these facilities, right? So the data has been there for years and decades, but it's never been tapped. So as we start to look at how do we find the data in all the different protocols, all the different types of devices that produce that data, that's where IOTech comes in, because then we can help connect those data sources to a data plane and then allow our data to be acted upon. So if we move forward, Shift Energy is a Canadian operation which is doing just that for chilled water. So there's a digital twin representation on the right, but what they've done is accessed all of this data, and they've consumed as much as they can running live data collection operations in buildings, and then create a model which will forecast demand, and then they can apply that model into a real operation. And if we roll forward, they have a block diagram of how that works. So let's click forward to a slide. And so, not all that different than, what Johan has been describing here, but something that, they've been piecing together on their own. We can see, though, that for all of the models that they have, the system inputs, all that information on the left came from, IOTech for historical readings. And then as that moves forward, they use that in predictive models to then take proactive control of devices in the field, interacting again with IOTech software to control building automation, chiller plants, things like that. So I think this is a really interesting use case of how it's technically an old problem using old technologies. But once you recognize the scope of the data to be collected, the number of old technologies that have to be unified, these are things our domain hasn't done before. And most organizations aren't prepared for those challenges. And that's where tools and solutions from IOTech and Acuvate can help. Excuse me. So let's move to the next slide. All right. So similar block diagram, because a lot of this is, again, that northbound, southbound type organization, but battery energy and storage. This is an example from Jinko Solar, who we're proud to be working with to support their introduction of battery capabilities into the U.S. market. That picture down on the right is an example of a battery farm, probably located next to a solar plant. Each of those containers is chock full of batteries. I don't have the exact number, but there are a lot of them. And so there's two things that have to go on. Typically, the most important is the command and control loop. And so we use the term of unit controller to describe the connectivity to the various pieces inside the battery, as well as this ambient sensors around the battery to move that data up into a endpoint that is going to make control decisions. And that's the unit controller connected into the customer operators endpoint management solutions. The left side of this is more data acquisition. So typical in a battery energy storage system, we need to collect historical data for various business purposes. And the amount of data that's going to come through that is staggering. Typically sampled at least every 60 seconds, often more frequently, every 15 seconds or less. Voltage, amperage, temperature of every cell and every battery and every container. We bring that through, normalize that data once again to make it easy to store, throw it in a topological structure that makes sense for later consumption, and then put that into a database for historical keeping. What's interesting about this problem is a great definition of edge computing. The amount of data is so great, we typically don't want to bring it to the cloud because of cloud ingress costs. But also, we can't afford any connectivity downtime. So if the network goes down, we still produce power. We still need that data collected. We still need local decisions to be made. So this needs to be an offline capable control loop that runs at the source of the data. So, this is as edge gets. We have the compute at the source of the data in this particular battery farm. So I think it's a very exciting new use case. Before we used to talk about oil platforms because they're hundreds of miles offshore. We need to keep their compute close to the source of data. Connectivity is a challenge. Here's an opposite example where the amount of data is so great that we want to keep the compute close to the source of data, just to be financially feasible in how we handle that volume of data. And so, there's two use cases, I think, describing current trends in edge computing in the energy space. And with that, Johan, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. We include some more use cases over here, and the colored ones, the brown ones, we worked on a little more detail. But these are just examples in addition to where Brad has been talking about. First one is around quality control, real-time quality control. It's really all about having in your production line, your manufacturing production line, having your cameras, your 4K cameras. You could be using 5G again as your wireless protocol to get a camera data to your edge environment, because it's important that is close to your camera, so your edge environment. So you got your IOTech Edge Central nearby, accessed via 5G, maybe 5G cameras, and of course then on your Edge Central and your IOTech Edge Central, you're running your AI machine vision models, which you might have trained and developed in the cloud against lots of data, but operationally you're running it in the Edge environment, because you want to have real-time feedback in the case of quality control, because you want to be able to send immediately feedback to the quality line to say, take this component out, take this part out because it is faulty, it's not okay. So that low latency, high throughput is important. Therefore, Edge is crucial. IOTech Edge is crucial over here. Running your machine vision over there, and then of course the training and development of the models you do in a cloud environment, because you will have access to more data to do so. Another example we rolled out is in the energy space, if you have offshore oil and gas production platforms, you might put there a private 5G network, and people have done that, private 5G network, put again Edge on that platform. That means that the data, camera data, other data, it will go from any part on that platform to your Edge device, and there you run your machine learning, your machine vision. So you make the decisions on that Edge platform, and then really, in the case of machine learning, you might create advisor set points back to the device. In the case of images, you might see HSE issues, you might see leakages, you might see spillage. So this is an example where most of the compute remains on the platform, data collection, data execution, and of course, so the analytics of that data remains on the offshore platform. And you use then 5G, private 5G in this case, of course, as your underpinning network. The other time critical HSE solutions is in a way similar from a setup point of view. So you take the output from your CCTV cameras, you might have it installed. If not, then of course you need to add maybe cameras to your site, but most of the time you will have CCTV cameras. As long as it's digital, you can stream that data again to a machine vision environment, again running on IOTech Edge Central. And because it's time critical, it could be things like you see looking for walk under lifting goods. You might see people walking under lifting goods, and you want to immediately raise an alert when you see that happening. So therefore, it's very time critical. Is the staff using the PPE? If you see that people are not doing that, again, time critical, because you want to warn people that they really have to wear their PPE, or don't walk on the lifting goods, or don't go into particular areas. So then again, it's about collecting data. Often in this case, it's camera data, can be CCTV cameras. You bring again to an Edge on the platform, on the onshore platform, the offshore platform, and then apply what I mentioned, AI machine vision. The data can be collected. The cameras can be, of course, fixed cameras, but also be on a drone, as we just showed before, or can be on robots like anybotics, because they could also be walking around on your platform, onshore, offshore platform. Power and inspection services, another example we've done. You got your 5G cameras on drones, so you had your drones flying. Then with being 5G, you real-time stream your data to IOTech Edge Central, and there you are running machine vision to analyze these images and to see, hey, there's a problem, and steer back to the drone real time and tell the drone to go back to the space again to make another picture or do something else. But you can immediately steer the drone from your Edge environment to change direction, take certain actions, and what have you. Again, in all of these cases, you normally will be using the training of the model would happen in the cloud, and you would have the data stored in AccuPrism, and then use machine vision to train and develop the model, and then operationally you run the model in your ads environment. And you see this picture as you've seen before. It was really the last part of the presentation. We still have about 4 to 5 minutes left for questions, and also for the last poll. When is your organization plan to adopt edge computing? So please pick up the poll and respond to the poll and submit it, please.